Luce and Haddon's prospectus for Time. They said that they were not interested in how much information they put between the covers, but how much they got into the minds of their readers. That has been in the DNA of Time Inc. from the very beginning.
Luce and Haddon instilled the idea that you could have an opinion, and I think you're always going to have people who disagree with you when you come down on one side or the other. But anytime you can influence the national conversation, I think it's important.
You know, I've spent a lot of time in the Time archives over the years. The fun thing is feeling like a colleague to all of those people who came before. The technology has changed enormously, the climate has, the news environment has. But in some basic way, we're all doing the same thing, telling the stories that we think are most important, most interesting, most surprising.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new in these files about the history of this company. For instance, Time has had an enormous influence on the English language. We gave the world words like socialite, racketeer, homophobia, op art, bobby soxer, televangelist. We also introduced the term World War II. Part of the genesis of our magazines was the desire to inform the public what war was all about. In 1969, Life published the picture of every single soldier who died during the week. I think this really helped turn the tide of public opinion against the war in Vietnam.
I grew up reading Time magazine's journalism out of Vietnam. And so when I went to Baghdad as Times correspondent there, I knew I was part of this legacy. There was this continuum going back 70 years. There's a tendency these days to pretend like there's no war going on. At Time, our job is to make people pay attention to things that may not be pleasant, may not make them feel good about themselves, but are absolutely vital because these are wars that are taking place in their name and they have to pay attention.
Henry Luce thought that the American public had the right to see the wages of war, the meaning of war. And I think that continued with the coverage of the civil rights movement.
Time Inc. magazines have a well-deserved reputation for fairness, objectivity, and all the rest. In the civil rights struggle, our objectivity slipped. Thank God. You couldn't be neutral in this. This could not continue. And Life magazine photographs did more to bring that incredibly significant change in the South than any other medium in the country.
From the very beginning, Britton Haddon had Time magazine trying to cover every single lynching. Life magazine back in the 1950s did a groundbreaking expose of segregation. Sports Illustrated series in the 1960s, The Black Athlete, A Shameful Story, generated the largest amount of mail that the magazine had ever received. I find the material in the archives endlessly fascinating. This collection documents the 20th century on into the 21st. One of the more fascinating things that I've come across in the archives, certainly the Zapruder film is one.
I was chief of the LA Bureau for Life. A colleague shouted to me, "Dick, Kennedy's been shot in Dallas." We landed and our stringer said, "I heard that there is a businessman who was out there in Dealey Plaza with his home movie camera and he got the whole assassination." I couldn't get anything but his name, Abraham Zapruder. I picked up the Dallas phone book. Thank God it was a Z. I called and this tired voice answered. I said, "Am I the first reporter to call you?" He said, "Yes." I went to his office. He said, all right, come on in. I'm about to show the film to 2 Secret Service agents. So we went into this little room. He beamed it up against the wall, and the 3 of us, 2 grizzled Secret Service agents and me, we just went, ugh. The single most dramatic moment in my entire career, and I thought, there is no way in hell that I'm going to leave this man's office without that film.
There are very few days in American history where in one day something happens that changes the way you look at the world and America's place in it. The cliche is that you can ask anyone where they were the day they heard about the Kennedy assassination, and decades later they could still tell you. The same was true of September 11th. There was a real question about, are we at war now, and if so, with whom, and what was that going to mean? The greatest war photographer of our age is Jim Notway, and it happened that Jim was at home on September 11th, and so of course grabs his cameras and runs downtown and takes pictures that are so extraordinary in capturing both the heroism and the horror of that day. I think himself narrowly missed being buried with a bunch of firemen as one of the buildings came down and they hurled themselves into a doorway as the debris comes over them. Having someone like him photographing it really brought home to us, I think, internally, oh, the war is here now. If Notway's shooting it, then the war's now in Lower Manhattan. We presumptuously say that we write the first draft of history. That was never more true than on that day.
I think the role of Time Incorporated's magazines is to really explain society and the world to our readers. The past couple of years, there was so much going on around them that affected their lives. They were losing money in their stock market accounts, their 401ks. Economically, the country was falling apart. People were losing their jobs. And I feel like we really rose to the occasion.
It's one thing to go in there, cover the unfolding tragedy, and then leave. Very early on, we decided that was not how we were going to do it. We were going to remain focused on the story for a long time. For the first time on a foreign assignment, I was accompanied by a video team. They were editing on the fly, sending stories in. We were putting them up on time.com and getting instant response from readers. Again, these are new kinds of commitments over and above the enormous commitment we've always given to big stories. And the fact that we're able to do this in a very difficult economic environment tells you something about how serious we are.
Over the last 30 or 40 years, our focus has broadened so much to cover things that are more of interest to women. In 1947, Life devoted 14 pages to the changing women's role. It showed 1 week's work for a housewife. It so clearly dispelled the comic myth of the housewife sitting at home eating bonbons. This was a 100-hour work week. In the summer of 1973, Andrew Heiskell, who was our chairman of the board, sent a printed dummy of People magazine to Claire Booth Luce, Henry Luce's widow. And it arrived just as she was heading over to the beauty parlor. And it immediately caught the attention of her hairdresser and the manicurist. And she wrote back transcribing the giddy back and forth. She said it was destined to be read in every hairdressing salon, every doctor's office, because it was just like eating peanuts. You couldn't stop once you began.
When we launched the magazine, we were promising advertisers that we would sell 1 million copies every week. And I was frantically trying to pick covers that would sell on the newsstand. Telly Savalas was in a show called Kojak. Big hit that summer. And we shot Telly from the waist up. I mean, this was just a great big blob of glistening flesh. We must have gotten a score of letters of women saying, okay, you showed me the top half of Telly, when are you going to show me the bottom half? we didn't quite understand, but it's been happily making money ever since.
These magazines are shorthand for what's on the public's mind.
If there is one word that sums up everything we deliver to the reader, it is understanding. You can get news anywhere, but if you want to understand what's going on, that's what we're doing. And people 10 years from now, 20 years now, 100 years from now are always going to want that.